Hey to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, ChiroThin, Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, McCaffrey's Clinical Mentoring, Local Gold, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Accident Records, Chiro Tax Pro, Full Script, your online dispensary, Angela Pearson, author of I'm Not Contagious, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 159 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your co-host, Luke Millette. Here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Guy DiMartino. And if you want to know more about chiropractic and becoming a lawyer with a chiropractic degree, stay tuned. So today we have the privilege of interviewing Guy DiMartino. He is coming in from where today?
Just outside of Orlando in Central Florida.
Okay. So you're down there in the Sunshine State.
I am. I was in exile in Indiana for 2 months because of the COVID, and I was just released on Sunday. So I drove down here quickly and was able to come on down.
Well, Luke and I are coming in from Colorado today, and something people might not know about Colorado is we actually have 300 days of sunshine out here, so maybe we could be called the Sunshine State.
Definitely, and the weather can be a little nicer than in Florida, especially in the summer, because in Florida it's horrible in August and September. So,
well, you are the episode 159 on the Chiro Hustle podcast, and we're really happy to have you here. And like all Chiro Hustle podcasts, the first question we ask everyone is just go back in time a little bit and tell us your chiropractic story and what influenced you to become a chiropractor.
Great. So my uncle was a chiropractor, and for the first 16 years of my life, I never went to another doctor. He took care of everything. And so when I graduated high school, or before I graduated high school, I knew that I wanted to become a chiropractor. And I went right into college and then went to chiropractic college. And I was a DC at 23 years old. I mean, that's all I knew was chiropractic. So I don't have one of those stories of folks who well, so let me go back just a step, Jim. So in my day and age in chiropractic, a lot of folks came into chiropractic because they were touched by chiropractic. Either they had some type of miraculous healing or saw something with one of their family members. And then, sort of the generations later, the folks who became chiros in the 2000s that I've seen, a lot of them didn't have the personal connection with chiropractic, but a lot of the folks knew somebody who was doing relatively well and wanted to go into natural health care. So I see that divide in the profession, but I was one of those folks who was touched by chiropractic because that's all I knew.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that it's really interesting to know how some people do get into chiropractic. And like you said, some have this, like me, when I was 16, I was injured playing high school football, hurt my shoulder. And that's how I was introduced into chiropractic.
So when I was in chiropractic college in the early 80s, if you looked at my class, they were either second or third generation chiropractors, or either they or their family member were touched by chiropractic. Now, when I occasionally go and talk at some chiropractic colleges, a lot of the students don't have that experience. They were drawn into chiropractic either, because they thought it was a decent business model, which is not a bad thing, or, they were into national health care, or because they settled to go into chiropractic college. So it's sort of, the difference that I've seen in the last 30 some odd years.
I guess I settled to go into marketing.
well, there you go. And me now, I settled to go into law. So
let's touch on that a little bit, because one of the things we like to ask people is what makes them unique in the chiropractic space. And you becoming a DC and then getting a law degree makes you pretty unique. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so I graduated National College in 1986. I practiced in Florida for a little bit of time, and then I went back up to the Midwest, and I practiced in South Chicagoland and in Northwest Indiana, and I lived in a town called Valparaiso. And I was sort of getting a little bit frustrated with what was going on with healthcare. And there was a law school that was in my hometown. And so I had some friends that were lawyers. And I said, well, I'm going to go and try this out for a term. And so I went and started it, went for one term. And I said, yeah, I think I sort of like this. And so then I continued my practice and went to law school full time because they ended up giving me a scholarship. And then when I graduated law school in 1999, I actually did both. I practiced chiropractic and law, and I had two suites right across the hall from each other in my building. And then in 2003, I closed my chiropractic office and moved back down to Florida to be closer to my parents. And, that's another long story. But then I went back and practiced chiropractic because I thought I still wanted to do something for a little bit of period of time in like 2010. And now I primarily practice law.
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting thing to discuss because chiropractic we know really well. We've interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of chiropractors at this point, and I've spoke to equivalently of at least one chiropractor a day for the past 5 years. And something is like very common in the chiro space where they're like, you shouldn't do anything but be a chiropractor. And sometimes I think that the chiropractor is has a huge level of judgment on their peers as to if you're not just adjusting spines, you're not practicing chiropractic.
Yes. I don't have any judgment. I see everything, as sort of gray. I believe in the chiropractic profession, based on my experience, that the adjustment should be front and center. But I've seen folks who have done a lot of good on both ends of the spectrum. Folks who are, they focus totally on the adjustment. And then I see folks who have gone over to the whole other end of the spectrum and the model where they have multidisciplinary clinics. And I think that the folks on both ends of the spectrum can do a really good job. Where I have a problem are the whole bunch of chiropractors that are in the mushy middle. And I think that really, they're not able to really identify who they are in the profession because they haven't taken a stand one way or the other. And I think the public doesn't know, what they are and what they stand for. I think it hurts their marketing. And I think a lot of the folks in the mushy middle are sort of struggling in their practice based on what I see.
So do you have any favorite motivational quotes or mantras that keep you fired up, whether it be on the side of law or on chiropractic?
Well, I believe, I don't know if it's a favorite quote or mantra, but I believe that we're all called to service and that our job should be serving other people, whether it's in healthcare or meeting people at their point of need. And so my focus on life is always trying to assist folks who are who come to me and serve them. And I believe that if I can benefit them in their lives, that I'm going to be blessed and benefit in my life.
I think it goes to I can't remember the person that said it, but if you give people what they want, you never have to ask for anything.
Or Zig Ziglar, if you have you help enough people get what they want. Yeah, Zig Ziglar's quote. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that rings true for so many. And I think so many chiropractors get into chiropractic, like you were saying earlier, because they want to take care of people. It's a nurturing profession where the philosophy is to give, love, serve. And I think that so many times when you said that there's confusion in the identity, sometimes the chiropractic profession may forget that the first step forward is to give, love, and serve, and to follow the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. And I think, as a chiropractor and as a doctor, the identity is a huge thing. And I even think right now the medical model doctors that are like practicing medicine, they are really struggling with their identity right now as well.
Absolutely. And I could tell you that when it comes, I'm involved in multiple professions. I'm a chiropractor, I'm an Anglican priest, and I'm a lawyer. And I can tell you that as being a chiropractor, I can show you email after email, even though I haven't been in practice almost 20 years now, from folks that I touched their lives 20 years ago, and they send me pictures of their kids. And I just received an email last week from somebody who said, I don't know if you remember, but you treated my son and he had all these problems. And now my son is graduating pharmacy school with a PhD in pharmacy. And we really, really appreciate what you did for him. And you want to know something, Jim? You're never going to see that in any other profession. You definitely don't see that in the law. You can give somebody $1 million as a lawyer. In 3 months, they won't remember who you were, or they'll say you charged them too much money to get them that $1 million. And you just don't see that with chiropractic. I mean, even when I went back in the practice in 2010, there were folks that looked me up from Indiana, and as they were coming through Florida, would stop by the office to get an adjustment. So it's very powerful. It's the touch. It's innate. It's service. It's all that's packaged up. And I think a lot of folks don't remember it. Don't remember why they've done it, and they're not, whether you're a John DiMartino guy being on purpose or whatever your philosophy is. A lot of folks get wrapped up into the day-to-day life, and because of that, they don't remember why they chose to do what they do.
Well, what you said there is called the life effect. And when you have a life effect on people, you can't put a dollar amount to that. So that's why people are so grateful and they have gratitude towards that life effect that you provide to them as a chiropractor. Because it is the healing hands. It's the analysis. It's the detection. It's the correction. It's the removal of that vertebral subluxation that really is a life effect that sets someone free. And that's why they're so emotionally connected to you with the indebtedness of it, because there's an actual touch that transcends their future.
Yeah, and it's because you've given a part of yourself to them. You can't have any interaction with any patient without giving a part of yourself, whether it's the time, whether it's the touch, whether, it's the whole combination, your knowledge, all that is the whole package. And many folks don't get that. And the only place that they do get that is in the chiropractor's office.
And that's why I think, when Edison made that quote, the doctor of the future, he was actually referring to chiropractors. And it is actual, what I would always say is it wasn't the doctor of the future, it's the doctor of the present. And I think that so many times when people think about the future's now. And we don't get the breath we just took back.
That's true.
We get a new one. And that's, once again, the life effect of what chiropractic does is it gives people new hope with new message. And it's the impression that you put on people. I think so many times people course through life and they don't get touched. They don't have somebody that can, figure out what's going on with their health through a proper exam and not give them something pharmacologically based. So when people actually get somebody to actually put an impression on them and put their hands on them, that is what's very unique and honest about the profession.
Agree 100%.
So how do you think the world would change if more people started getting under consistent chiropractic care?
Well, I think that folks would have to first change their mindset. So if folks come into chiropractic as a patient and they change their mindset, they're going to look at themselves more holistically. Every time they have a sniffle or a cold, they're not going to run to the doctor to get an antibiotic. So, hopefully folks' immune system will be stronger. They'll be, aligned better. They won't have the chronic diseases. I think that it would be such a prevention that it might take some of the stress off of the current healthcare system, which is more of a sickness as opposed to a wellness model of care.
So where do you think the profession is going to find itself in 20 years?
I think the profession, from what I see, and being a lawyer now, a lot of times I see folks that are in strife. I think that the profession is going to have some problems for the folks that are in the mushy middle. I think the folks who are very philosophy-based and are more on the straight side, I think they're going to do very well. And I think folks on the other end of the spectrum that have integrated into the medical model, but it's a chiropractic-owned organization. And so they're able to take people and handle all their healthcare problems, whether it's chiropractic or whether it steps out of chiropractic into a medical-based model. I think those folks are going to succeed. But I think the folks that really don't know what they stand for, they're just going to be, to the average person, they are going to look like just another physical therapist.
Well, I just kind of thought of a off-script question, because you're involved in law and in chiropractic. Have you ever had a chiropractic case come into the courtroom that you had to work on?
I've had chiropractic cases that I've been an expert witness on. I've had, so chiropractic cases in the courtroom. I've had a number of matters that I've handled before licensing boards, a number of matters in which there was litigation between insurance companies and the chiropractor. So I've seen it from, three different avenues. So shoot, man, ask me a question.
What's the craziest case that you had to work on that involved chiropractic?
Well, I can't.
You can talk about it legally.
Right. So I think that some of the saddest cases that I've had to look at are folks who ended up, having a stroke in close proximity to a chiropractic adjustment. In most of the cases that I have reviewed and cases that I've looked at, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the other professionals that were involved in the case, is that the chiropractor caught the person in the middle of a vertebral artery dissection. So the typical symptoms for a vertebral artery dissection is what the normal DC would see in their office: neck pain and stiffness. And there's usually no acute trauma. It's usually somebody who's possibly doing sit-ups or turning their head in their car, or one case that I was involved with, a person went over their handlebars. So that was a little bit of a trauma. So what happens is that you get a little separation in the blood vessel. And so then over subsequent days or weeks, it starts to pool, and then it starts to clot, and then that causes a little blockage in a blood vessel that goes to the cerebellum. And then folks will start to get dizziness, and they'll start vomiting, and they'll start possibly having a problem with their speech. So the chiropractor did not cause the problem. The problem started before they entered the chiropractor's office, and there's no test to determine it, but the manifestation of the symptoms occurred while they were in the middle of treatment. So folks start blaming the healthcare provider. So that's, the typical scenario that I see.
And that goes back to the philosophy of limitations of matter. And typically those cases, somebody comes in with some type of a concern with their health, and they're like, well, I need the chiropractor to fix me.
And the chiropractor's like, well, you're 47 years old and you haven't done anything up to this point to have a better quality of life with your health. All you've done is put pills into your mouth and you don't exercise, you don't eat right. And oh, by the way, I'm going to adjust you and something might pop up where you might start feeling better, or you might have this entrenched condition from the matter inside of your body that now you'll experience symptoms because we've put motion back into joints that haven't had motion in for maybe 2 decades.
Absolutely. Or, I practiced when I was practicing, I was very, very close to a rural area. And so we would have these farmers come in and they would come in off of their tractor and they would be like, I went and saw a chiropractor like 20 years ago and he put me on a bale of hay and he just cracked my back and I was good for the last 20 years. And now I am 60 years old and I want you to do the same for me. And you're like, whoa, hold on. Nothing's been done in 20 years. Your body's a little different than it was when you were 40, now that you're 60. So you're absolutely right, Jim. Sometimes folks that, they want this quick fix or this quick hit. And, many times in order to make lasting change, we have to tear the body down a little bit, and it can be more painful and it can cause more symptoms. And that's why we really should not be focusing on patients' symptoms as an indicator of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to do a proper intake and you want to do the exam and you want to do like the subjective talking to somebody and say, hey, so what's going on? Did you injure yourself? Are you doing anything to help it? Have you ever tried chiropractic? Of course. You want to go through that type of rhetoric with people. And so many times I think you're right. People are like, can I just get that one miracle adjustment or that second miracle adjustment and I'll be done seeing you for the rest of my life? And it's like, well, did you get that one miracle dental visit? Did you get the second miracle dental visit? You never went back for the rest of your life? Gotcha. So I think when people think about chiropractic, you're right. When people do a proper job of philosophically educating people is why they're there, how it helps them, and why it's something that they should pay attention to, not just for a simple care plan, which might not be so simple, but they have to pay attention to it for longevity. And longevity is what gives the reward of good health. And I think that so many times when people think of chiropractor, they think about it for slip and fall or a litigation case or a car crash or something like that. They're like, well, the attorney told me I have to go in to see you for 24 visits and yada, yada. And, the next thing you know, we have a deconditioned case of somebody that thinks when they're done with that court case or that litigation case that, hey, I don't have to see the chiropractor ever again.
Yeah. So right now I'm sitting in Florida, and that's a big thing in Florida. There's a lot of chiropractic clinics that are just, what we call PIP clinics or auto clinics. And so, whether they're doing a general service or disservice to folks, it's hard to say because they've never really, it sort of becomes a symbiotic relationship between the doc, the lawyer, the auto accident, the insurance company. And so, very rarely do you see folks who make their first foray because a lawyer has sent them to the chiropractic office. I don't think these people become chiropractic patients for life. I don't think they know the first thing about maintenance care or getting checked out. They're there because in the end, they want some type of remuneration for what happened in the accident.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This week's episode is brought to you by Imaging Services, Chiro Chiro Moguls, Mahalo Wellness, McCaffrey's Clinical Mentoring, Local Gold, Chiro Health USA, The Goodman Factor, Chiropractic Rocks, Winner's Edge, Accident Records, Chiro Tax Pro, Full Script, your online dispensary, Angela Pearson, author of I'm Not Contagious, and Digital Hustle. Let's hustle.
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things I can see for one of those types of clinics is the patient dictates policy.
Or the lawyer.
Yeah, so we have not the chiropractor that's providing actual service care. They're just kind of doing patchwork care to facilitate the needs for somebody to get that check.
Yep. And so it becomes sort of a business relationship as opposed to, really impacting folks' health. So, people need, in my view, they need to have some skin in the game. And so if folks are not paying out of their pocket for what is, for the care that they're getting, actually, having making the commitment to do something like that, I think that there's something that's lost in the exchange between the doctor and the patient. In these cases, the patient is always like, it's not my responsibility. It's either my insurance company's responsibility, the other person's, insurance company's responsibility, as opposed to them saying, hey, it's my responsibility to get better.
Well, those are the mushy middles. And when we talk about like accountability and self-responsibility, that's why chiropractors that don't have good philosophically trained patients are not going to make it through this shutdown from COVID. And I think that the ones I've been able to communicate with through this shutdown of COVID is that the ones that have educated and done the lay lectures and bring a spouse in to talk to them why their significant others coming under care and have great referral-based practices, those are the ones that are going to succeed through the confused marketplace right now. And I think that those are the winners.
So, years ago, I don't know what some of the docs are doing now, but years ago, there was usually a 2 or 3 day or step process before folks would even get their first adjustment in a chiropractic office. Because the adjustment was such an important part. And we didn't want folks to think, well, if they come in and you look at them and 10 minutes later you're throwing them down and you're snapping their neck or you're snapping their back or you're doing whatever you do, that's all there is, that it was a quick decision. And, part of what these guys taught back then is that you really have to have the spouse coming in for the report of findings. And then you really have to have the patient and their significant other, whether it's a mom or dad or a brother or sister, somebody that's going to support them, come to a spinal care class within the first 7 to 10 days, because that supports the whole treatment paradigm and gets people to understand what's going on. Because when the wife is complaining, I still have neck pain, and the husband's saying, well, now I can see you can turn your head more, you get that constant reinforcement instead of folks going on to Google and saying, well, they come in the next day and say, well, my neck still hurts, I need an MRI. You know what I mean? So we've lost that for many folks in society right now, because everybody wants the quick hit. Everybody wants, to be better instantly. Everybody people don't want to deal with pain and they don't want to deal with strife. They want to come in, they want to get out very quickly. We have all this instant gratification. And so I think things are lost in that translation because of what's happening in society right now.
So how do you market yourself? How do you use social media to your advantage and get your name out there?
So if I were, I have a very strong YouTube presence, and I have a number of podcasts, and I do Facebook Lives and things like that. So if I were in chiropractic practice again, I would be doing what you and I are doing right now. I would be meeting and doing Facebook Lives with all the other businesses in your local community. That would be one aspect that I would do to develop relationships, because we're in a relationship business. And then I would be getting on either YouTube or Facebook Live or a podcast, and I would be providing good, valuable information to the public, whether it's regarding low back health, whether it's regarding spinal health, whether it's regarding nutrition, whatever your thing is. And I would just be providing good, valuable information so that you become the actual authority in your microcosm of the world. And this is just great. I mean, you're in Colorado right now. I am in Florida right now, and we're just chatting about things that are really important to us and things that we care about, right? So on the other hand, if we were talking about neck pain, you'd be hearing what Guy thinks are triggers to neck pain and what we can do about it. And there's going to be somebody that's going to resonate with my personality and the way that I come off. And those folks that watch, they're already sold on what either Guy has or Jim has. You know what I mean? So you're just able to make the bar so low for folks by putting yourself out there. But you have to actually, take the time and energy to learn it. Like your videos now are much better quality than they were at episode number 20, right? I mean, you have a Blue Yeti microphone there. You have a background. Myself, even though this is not my full studio, because my full studio is in Indiana, you know what I mean? I have lighting. I could have my DSLR on, but right now I'm going through a FaceTime. I have a microphone so you can hear me. I have, I don't have my text messages coming through on the screen. You know what I mean? You have to take the time and the energy to learn this stuff. So we're not NBC News, but we look halfway professional today, don't we? I mean,
you said a lot of things I kind of want to follow down the trail on with you. And I think that one of the most important things is that you mentioned about marketing is co-branding with other influencers in the community. We call it cross-pollination marketing. And when you meet other influencers, then you become referable. And then you start shining a spotlight on what makes them awesome and tell their story. And then you allow them to feature what they do and what makes them unique in the marketplace, or what makes their business so great for the community. Other people watch that and they're like, wow, that was hosted by a chiropractor. Wow. Honey, did you see that chiropractor that interviewed the guy that runs that other business? Yeah, maybe that would be a good guy to talk to for what's going on with you. So.
Absolutely. And that's the way it works, because what you're doing is you are taking your time and energy and highlighting somebody else, and you're giving service to other people. But in doing that, people get to see who you are, and so we attract different people in our lives. So the next time they are thinking about you, you become top of mind. Or if somebody in that other person's business has to call in sick because they're having headaches, they're going to say, hey, I remember Jim. Jim interviewed me. He's a great guy. Why don't you give him a call and tell him that I called you? And then they called Jim's office and said, Bob calls. Oh, we're going to get you right in. We have a relationship with Bob. Bob looks good to his employee. You're already sold because Bob has given you the referral. And they can go and look you up and put your name in the Google and see what comes up and see what kind of person you are. See that you have a beard. See that Luke wears glasses. See that Guy has a lot of gray hair that hasn't been cut in months because of the whole COVID thing. You know what I mean? But then the people are already sold, and it's a low bar for them. Yeah, I can't tell you how many DCs I go and I put their name in the Googles. I can't find anything about them. I can't even find the correct address to their office. They have 6 different addresses. Their website is some, if they have any website at all, it's some either it looks like all the other Chiro's websites, or it looks like it was from 1970 in DOS. So, I mean, it's all the package that you want to put together.
Well, you said it again. The most important thing about marketing is relationship branding. And if you build a good, positive relationship with people, you build a good, the feeling effect, the feeling effect. Wow, they were really nice. They showed up on time. They hosted me. They did great things. Now, next thing is, that's why I told Luke this was a genius idea for us, because if chiropractic is the community we want to serve, well, what happens if we need Guy DiMartino on Friday at 2 p.m. and he's on the way to the airport and he sees Jim Chester's phone call coming across and he's in an Uber, whose phone call does guy not push but takes? He takes Jim Chester's phone call because I built a relationship with you. And you're like, wow, Jim was really nice. He hosts me on his show. He talks about chiropractic. I like that stuff. And now I'm going to be his friend and answer his phone call because he built a relationship with me.
Absolutely. I can tell you a story that just happened. I referred somebody to this doc's office, and I spoke to this person last night, and the doc's office was just busting this client's stones about insurance and this and that thing. Now, mind you, over the years, this doc's office has gotten paid from my office over six figures in patient fees, over six figures. So I said, that's fine. So what I do is I contact another doc and I tell them the problem. And she said, you have the person call me right now and we'll get them in tomorrow. And why? It's because we have relationships. It's because, that doctor, has treated me, treated my wife, I would never send a client to somebody that hasn't worked on me. Just like when I was in practice, I would never recommend any type of treatment to any of my patients that I didn't go through myself, whether it was some weird diet or some weird exercise or whether it was standing on my head. You know what I mean? I went and worked that first. So that's the most important thing. You're right, Jim. If I saw that you called and I was busy, I would text you back and say, Jim, I'm busy. As soon as I'm free, I'll get in touch with you. And that's because of a relationship. Now, you and we got in a little bit of a relationship because of Larry Goodman, because Larry Goodman and I have a relationship. Now, Larry Goodman and I met when he was a student in a class that I was doing and I was presenting. And after the class, we spoke together. But that's the way it works. We're in a relationship business, whether you're doing what you're doing as an entrepreneur, whether you're a DC, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a tailor. We're in people business.
Yeah, I think you said it all right. And I do think in this modern era with what you were saying, yeah, I run a YouTube channel. Yeah, I do podcasting. Those things, they're modern. And I think that when people think about marketing and branding and strategy, they have to stay up with the times. And like you said, I go into the Googles and I look for somebody and, they have 5 addresses and their website looks like it was built on DOS. And I think that as people realize, as they matriculate to 2020, that they have to have a web presence. Because I've said this time and time again, you could be out of school for the past decade and have had a rock in practice, but there's a student right now that is crushing it on Instagram. They're crushing it on TikTok. They're doing things on Facebook Lives where the old folks live now. And they're doing things that are going to come out and they're going to implement this strategy with the new mediums that are available. And they're going to take the market where you've been practicing for the past decade and you didn't decide that it was important to stay on top of the marketing strategies and do videos and learn how to do an email drip campaign, and you didn't know how to clear up your Google Places to where you were searchable and people could find you on a map. There's so many things that go into what you're saying that matter for the listener that's going to pay attention to this episode.
And then you're going to look back and say, well, what happened to my patient volume? And you're going to find out that young person who's been putting in the time and energy and meeting people where they're at, they're just crushing it. I mean, I have a young guy down the block here. He's been in practice for 5 or 7 years. I've been watching him. He bought an old practice from somebody who probably was seeing 20 patient visits a week. And there's some days now that he sees 100 patient visits a day. And you want to know something? He's done it because he's young and he's energetic and he belongs to every organization and people in town like him. Whether he gets people, some people he don't get better, but you want to know something? They'll always say, go and check with him. Go and have him check you out because he's a straight shooter and he'll give you the straight scoop, or she. So, I mean, that's what it's all about.
I have another off-script question.
On
the topic of young chiropractors and students, anyone who might be starting out, What are some common legal mistakes that you see young chiropractors making that maybe you can help them prevent?
The biggest legal mistake that I see everybody making is that they don't want to spend a few $100s for folks to go ahead and take a look at any type of contract or lease or something that they're entering into. Because, listen, if you are a young chiropractor, you're no dummy. You have a bachelor's degree, you went to college, you know how to read things, and you think that you're smart and you think that you know it all. And then you go into work as an associate, and then you find out when it's time to leave, or the person you work for is a creep, that you can't even practice in that area for 5 years. You know what I mean? Because you signed a restrictive covenant. Or me, I did this. I went into a building and I hated my landlord. As soon as my lease was up, I went ahead and wanted to leave. I go to hire my sign company to take the sign off of the building. And this is in the 1980s. And he says, you need to look at your contract. You attach that to my building. That sign is now mine. So I had to go and spend $3,000 in 1988 for a new sign when I moved, because I didn't have pay somebody. Or half the time I just look at stuff, if it's a 10-minute thing for folks, because it's no big sweat. It's sort of like paying it forward, and I could say, well, you need to know that, for instance, I had a conversation with you saying, you need to look at this air conditioning thing, because that could be a big thing. Do you know what I mean? So I would say to somebody who had the lease that I had, you need to understand that if you attach that sign to the building and you leave, you're going to lose that. So so it's things like that, Luke, where they enter lease contracts for equipment, and then they think that once they pay off the lease that they don't have to pay an additional kicker. But 9 times out of 10, they might have to pay at the end of the lease close to the same amount of money that the equipment originally cost in order for the equipment to be theirs. So it's things like that.
So double check all the contracts and leases.
Yes, and not just double check it, really run it by somebody. Because, for instance, if you were going to go practice with Jim, and Jim gives you a contract with a restrictive covenant, and the restrictive covenant says something to the effect that if you leave my practice for the period of 2 years, you can't practice anywhere in the county. And you guys are outside of Denver, and you possibly have a county that's 20 miles long and, has 100,000, 200, 500,000 people. I would say this covenant is there, but you want to know something? It's most likely not legally enforceable because it's too broad in scope. So you just need to know that that's there. But if push comes to shove later on and the person gives you a problem, we can defend that. You know what I mean? And that's the type of situation. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what kind of books do you like to read? What other podcasts do you listen to? And what are some of your hobbies?
So this weekend, when I was driving down, I listened to 2 books. One is a new book by Crenshaw, and it's called Fortitude. He was a Navy SEAL, and now he's a congressman out of Texas, and he lost his eye in an IED explosion. And I thought that book was very good. It was about, a lot of the Navy SEAL books coming out now. It's all about self-responsibility. And then I listened to John Grissom's new book called Camino Island. And now I'm usually reading 5 or 6 books at the same time. I'm reading some books on church history right now. And so podcasts, I listen to Big Questions with Cal Fussman. I listen to Tim Ferriss podcast. I listen to your podcast. Those are, I listen to some others, but that's what I'm listening to and doing this week.
What are some of your hobbies?
I bike ride.
Nice.
I do yoga. I run. Those are pretty much my biggest hobbies. Like Saturday, I'll be going on a 60-mile bike ride.
Nice.
Wow.
So,
It's interesting. we ask these questions, and we get a chance to fuel our minds from other people's endeavors and what they enjoy. And sometimes I'll jot it down, and I'll like check out a book that somebody mentions, or I'll jot it down and I'll check out what they listen to. Or I just like, well, a guy does yoga. He likes bike riding. Awesome. I like those things too. But I have a brother that doesn't have any hobbies. And I was just Googling, and I was like, what are hobbies for men in their 40s?
It depends upon what kind of guy you are. I know some guys in their 40s who end up going to Costa Rica and trying to find young Costa Rican women. So it depends upon what your thing is.
But yeah, I was like, you know what? Start small, find something that you like. Maybe start going out, taking pictures of fun things on your cell phone and post them on social media.
Yeah.
That might be a little easy first step for you to find out a hobby if you like photography.
Yep.
So what are some websites and resources where people can find you if they want to learn more?
Well, I have a number of websites. gsdmartino.com or guydimartino.com. You can find me on Facebook at Guy DiMartino Law, Florida, Guy DiMartino Law, Indiana. I have multiple YouTube channels under my name.
Is there anything that we did not ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I think that back to the problem, or back to the question that Jim asked and you asked before, Luke, is that what do you see for the future of the profession? That really has been weighing on me because of the folks that I deal with. I think that in order for us to survive, we are going to have to take a position and a stand, no matter where you are in that. And then you have to proselytize it. You have to get out there and teach people, and you need to, the doc needs to understand who they are and what their message is and the benefit that they're given to society. And I don't care where you are on that spectrum, but you need to take a stand. You can't be all things to all people. If you called me up, Jim, and said, "Hey, Guy, I need help with a divorce," I'd say, "You're talking to the wrong guy." Or if you called me up and said, "Hey, I have a criminal matter," I'd say, "Nothing I could do for you there." But if you call me up and say, "Hey, Guy, I got a problem with my licensing board or Medicare or Medicaid or one of those coming at me," I'm like, "Let's do it. We can, I can lead you through that, through that type of course." So you need to know where you stand. We can't be all things to all people.
Great advice.
Yep.
Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this episode. Dr. DiMartino, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's good to see you, and I look forward to catching up to you next.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.